Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our major stories. Clash between soldiers and police in Damaturu, Yobe State capital, leaves at least 4 people dead. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo offers assurance of ongoing negotiations for release of more Chibok schoolgirls still in Boko Haram captivity. Economic and Financial Crimes Commission recovers huge sums of money in dollars, pounds and naira from Ikoyi apartment in Lagos State. And opposition political parties and civil society organizations in South Africa protest in Pretoria, demand Zuma's resignation. Now do remember that for more on our top stories and others, please visit our website channelstv.com and youtube.com/channelsweb. You can also watch us on the go on your mobile device. Log on to m.channelstv.com or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows phones from their respective stores. Having the Channels TV and Channels 24 app will give you access to news and updates. You also have the Eyewitness feature, so you too can be part of the news. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the Eyewitness menu and follow the instructions to share those pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. We can take a look at some of those pictures, and let's begin with this one from Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, showing people whom our Eyewitness reporter says are public view center operators. They're protesting against an alleged blocking of their decoders by MultiChoice despite paying their bills, and they're asking the authorities to come to their aid. Still on protests is this one from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. It shows people whom our Eyewitness reporter says are next of kin to late primary school teachers in the state. They're protesting against non-payment of their pensions and gratuities by the state government since 1991. Our next picture is from Malubu part of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, showing a dangerously overloaded moving vehicle, yet people are sitting on it. And here's one from Lafia, the Nasarawa state capital, showing people whom our Eyewitness reporter says are workers sitting dangerously with their work tools on a moving vehicle. The reporter wants men of the Federal Road Safety Corps to do more to maintain sanity on our roads. Thanks for your pictures. We always like you to be part of the news. Nigeria's former president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, may soon face a House of Representatives inquiry into the award of Oil Prospecting License 245. The House arrived at this resolution today at plenary, where it mandated its ad hoc committee on the investigation of alleged corruption, malpractices and breach of due process in the award of OPL 245. The chairman of the committee, Mr. Razak Atunwa, says the body is to, among other things, conduct a thorough examination of the process and circumstances surrounding OPL 245. Well, count me out, and that seems to be the position of the former president over allegations that he received $200 million from the $1.3 billion payments made by the international oil companies for access to the block. His media advisor, Ike Chukwueze, said that the former president knows nothing about the funds and that those behind the allegations are trying to tarnish his rising profile in the international community. Dr. Jonathan said he did not know Dan Etete, a former oil minister and the architect of the controversial deal, who allegedly received a huge chunk of the payments from oil giant Shell for the lucrative oil block which he owned. The report also claimed that Dr. Jonathan and Etete had known each other for years, according to a Shell member of staff. Shell has denied any wrongdoing. Nigeria's government passed on $1.1 billion of the money paid by Shell and the Italian firm Eni to a company called Malabu, which was controlled by Mr. Etete, according to Italian prosecutors. Documents filed by the Italian prosecutors claim that $466 million of that sum was then laundered through Bureau de Change and passed on to the former president and members of his government. Meanwhile, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission today raided the Kano home of a former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Adoke. It was gathered that the raid was aimed at retrieving vital documents that could help in the prosecution of the case against Mr. Adoke, who has been charged along with 8 others over the controversial Malabu oil deal. The EFCC was said to have conducted the search at the home located in Nasarawa GRA in the early hours of today. Mr. Adoke is accused by the federal government of masterminding the payment of $1.3 billion to Malabu Oil, owned by a former Minister of Petroleum, Dane Tete, and other influential individuals and their firms as part of the settlement of the tussle over the ownership of OPL 245. Still in court now, hundreds of Otodo Gbame evictees today turned up at the Lagos High Court sitting in the Igbohere area of the state to hear a ruling on the alleged unlawful demolition of their community by the Lagos state government. About 33 members of the community in the Ilado area of Lekki had filed a contempt application against the state governor Akinwumi Ambode and some other government officials, as well as the state's commissioner of police, for allegedly flouting a ruling which ordered parties to maintain status quo with regards to the demolition. Their hopes were, however, dashed as Justice Adeniyi Onigbaju held that by the provisions of Section 308 of the Constitution, which confers immunity on the governor, the court lacked jurisdiction to entertain the application. The justice, who had earlier ordered Governor Ambode to appear before him to explain the reason for the demolition, after a court order stopping same, backtracked, citing the constitutional immunity of the governor, which shields him from any legal case while he remains in office. It's a day in the courts and another investigation, this time the Code of Conduct Tribunal approving April the 20th for the arraignment of Justice Sylvester Nguta before a two-man panel of the tribunal in Abuja. Justice Nguta's case file was submitted to the CCT by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, on a 10-count charge bordering on false declaration of assets. The service of summons has been effected on Justice Nguta. All right, now let's cross over to Abuja. Here's Linda Akigbe. Linda.
Hello, Ijoma. The northern delegates to the 2014 National Conference have asked the federal government to reject the recommendations of the conference. A former Minister of Mines and Steel and a delegate at the conference, Alhaji Bashir Dalhatu, while addressing a news conference in Abuja, cited inadequate representation of a northern region at the conference as reason for the opposition. He also criticized the use of voice votes at the conference, saying it lacked credibility.
It's 3 years after delegates from the 36 states of the Federation converge on the nation's capital to deliberate on issues of Nigeria's unity and development. But it seems all is not well with the recommendations adopted at the meeting, as some delegates from the north pick holes in the report of the conference. They also want the federal government to shun implementation of the report.
The conference therefore commenced with a region that had the largest landmass and population, grossly underrepresented, brazenly treated unfairly. This engendered a deep sense of apprehension and justifiable suspicion. Above all, the action of that government raised serious issues about the credibility and the outcome of the conference conclusions.
There were other issues raised by the northern delegates at the confab. They want issues of clashes with herdsmen resolved.
We urge the federal government to frontally confront this issue by ensuring that incessant conflicts between farmers and herdsmen is brought to an end. Farmers must have their farmlands protected against being overrun by herds of cattle and destroying their farm produce. Their safety and security must be ensured. The herdsmen should also be provided with routes, ranches, and all other facilities that will ensure that they also get enough grazed land to graze their cattle without entering the farmland of innocent farmers.
The observation by delegates from the northern part of the country comes 3 years after the report of the National Conference was submitted. Many are watching if their call for the rejection of the report will be accepted by the government.
The federal government has ordered the procurement of additional 800,000 vaccines to tackle meningitis, which has claimed over 400 lives in parts of the country. This formed part of resolutions at the Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, who sat in for the President. This is the first council meeting held without President Muhammadu Buhari since his return from the United Kingdom last month. Addressing State House correspondents after the meeting, the Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, explained that in spite of his absence at the meeting, the President is in good health.
Members of the Federal Executive Council settling down for the usual weekly meeting. At 11 o'clock, the scheduled time for the commencement of the meeting, the President's seat is still empty. Instead, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, takes over the meeting as he calls for the national anthem and prayers. After the meeting, the Minister of Information, Mr. Lai Mohammed, explains the absence of the President at the meeting, even though he is still in the country.
The President is in town. The President is attending to other issues. Mr. President looked at the agenda. It was a very light agenda, and decided that the Vice President should preside. It's not unusual for the kind of interest that has been shown, especially given the fact that Mr. President was away for a while on medical treatment, and we're not surprised that people will be wondering, is Mr. President, is it ill again? He's not ill. He's not sick. And I'm sure that later in the day, or by tomorrow morning, he will be back in the office.
Back to the business of the day, the ministers focused on the spread of meningitis in some parts of the country. The Minister of State for Health explained that the government is not resting on its oars in curbing the spread of the disease.
We're expecting by this weekend 823,000 vaccines from the UK. They have been approved by the World Health Organization. I'm talking about quality-wise. And it's a special kind of vaccine that's called the conjugate vaccine, which has a longer protection of about 10 years than the usual vaccine which we have been using before, which is called the polysaccharide vaccine. That one gives protection for about 2 or 3 years.
Meanwhile, the ministers are expected to present a record of their stewardship as part of activities to mark the midterm of the administration. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, federal government delayed 20 billion green bond sale pending the passage of a 2017 budget. For some business news, join us again.